and last Wednesday. I don't know whether invoices would have been submitted.
It would be good to get a total cost of what we're going to have to include in next year's rates. The second one is probably the bigger number, and I'm just trying to tot up here, worst case, what this might all cost. And what I've got is the 4.35 for Tay Street, the potential capex and opex of 17.5 with a variance. The dredging, which is not included in here, which could be in excess of 18 million.
That's right.
Say 3 million for Littleton and Little River, even though it's not earthquake related. And then if we go to the longer term solutions, option 1 or 2, which is going to be around 50 with a variance there. And I get a total of between 80 and 122 million. Is that worst case what we're looking at?
That would be worst case what you're looking at. Just looking at one of those other big ticket items around the dredging, we've just received the modelling information back. It does show some improvement in water levels. We're not convinced that drop in water levels is going to protect houses, so we're not sure whether we can recommend that we spend money on managing the river in that way in that area yet. So I'm not sure we're across the line on dredging.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Back.
So you're doing a cost-benefit analysis on each of the options as you go through?
Absolutely, yeah. So particularly for Lower and Upper Heathcote, we had teams out last week measuring floor levels so that we can actually, if we drop the water level by X, do you actually save a house?
Glenn?
Thank you. My question is just about, I recognise obviously mainly this is about the Tay Street option, but you have talked, and this seems to have come up with greater prominence, about the Lower Dudley. Mike, how important is that still in consideration for, as part of the equation for drainage? So a lot of that comes through Dallington, Banksav, etc.
Yeah, that's right. So how important in terms of the work, the maintenance work we're doing now, or
just in terms of the overall equation, that's still a critical part.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you remember an earlier slide that we showed in, I think when we presented the longer term options, and we showed the network with 2 cubic metres a second coming in from up above Mayoral and Shirley Stream 2 cubic metres a second, and then you get down to Hills Road, then another 2 cubic metres a second. By the time you get down to the Lower Dudley, you've got a network which requires 10 cubic metres a second capacity, and you've got just currently only got about 4.8. So by removing 2 cubic metres a second, we still have significant constraints downstream. So all those properties downstream of Hills Road are still very much at risk, even though we've got this solution. But it goes a long way to improving it.
Just to clarify too, Tay Street's an historical name. It's actually in Patrick Street. If you look up Tay Street, you end up in Burnside. So it's actually an historical name, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Pauline?
Just quickly, as part of the upgraded maintenance, the channel widening and deepening, and also the removal of obstructions, do we have assurance that all this is now embedded in our operational program for the residents to know that there's going to be a cyclic addressing of this? It's not a one-off, it's going to be an ongoing thing in our program?
Yep, so what we're doing over the next 2 or 3 weeks is we're looking at, we're very much aware that there's been a lot of speed associated with this work. And I'm very much aware that there's parts of the business that haven't come along with us in terms of impacts on exactly that sort of thing. How's this going to affect the maintenance contract? What could a new regime potentially look like? So over the next week, there's quite a lot of internal rigorous challenge within the Taskforce around what we're promoting, and then getting the operational side of the business to challenge that work again, and then that'll be, I'll use the word handshaked across, so that we can actually change maintenance regimes. So there's, if maintenance regimes have to change, they will change. Yeah, absolutely. Has it been done yet? No, because we still need to challenge and validate a lot of our assumptions that we've made. Yep.
I think that would give people confidence to know that you're definitely looking at that, and we may well find that the pump station combined with the maintenance and the clearing together has an incredibly positive impact on this whole situation, plus the widening of some of the culverts which are making
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, that stream widening, deepening and removing obstructions in Lower Dudley will improve the flow, but it won't get us all the way there in terms of returning pre-earthquake levels of flood risk.
Right, so one more quick.
Yeah, very quickly. Just getting back to the EQC stuff too, Mike, because I know that you've been working on this just for City Council. Well, obviously, EQC's doing some work around land damage and flooding and things. And I see that engineers are on the ground from EQC now going in to check land and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any doubling up, in your opinion, going on there that...
No.
No, there's a total sharing of information, and you might have seen the EQC press statement that came out yesterday, which said that EQC has announced it's open to contributing towards off-site flood works as a way of resolving some claims, and has been working with the Christchurch City Council to identify where this may be an option. So, there are issues around who can pay for what that will be part of that longer conversation that we need to have. But they were definitely sharing information and working together.
Okay, so engineers on the ground going into houses in, say, Flockton and Carrick and those areas aren't going to be repeating or reinventing the wheel on work that's already been done by the Taskforce?
They're there with a slightly different mission.
Right.
Their mission is to determine how much of the land damage is earthquake related, and whether that they have a liability. And the court case has an issue around that, because that is their increased flooding vulnerability. That is the question one, and the second is how do you compensate for that? Yep. Yanni.
Just related to the people that unfortunately have had their houses lowered in the flood zone, have we put in place at an operational level a moratorium or a requirement for consents so that where people have foundations being repaired by EQC or their insurer, it's mandatory that they get consent?
That's actually a very good place for me to perhaps raise the detail of the briefing paper that we undertook to provide to the Minister last week. Right. And one of the things that is, and so this is basically setting out the temporary flood defence measures that we're asking the government to assist us with. And it goes through a number of those, obviously short-term assistance for the worst affected households, earthquake support coordinators, temporary relocation accommodation support. That's absolutely vital and urgent, and that is why we need government on board to assist with that in Christchurch. It is clearly only in the areas of earthquake-related damage. We are very clear that in the Flockton area we are talking about earthquake-related damage. So we undertook to tell government what it is that the city needed as a result of earthquake-related damage. We've done that, but the other one is around, and it's not just the resourcing and collaboration, which is obvious and has been a big part of what Mike has reported to us, but the other is the regulatory assistance of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment to investigate ways in which the Building Act could be amended to require the floor level of a building to be raised where that property is subject to increased flooding vulnerability as a result of earthquake damage to the land and or buildings. So that's a methodology to get to the answer to your question, but if I would actually quite like to formally table the recommendations that we made to government and ask that they be circulated to all members of the council. And I think that people will see that we've gone to government to ask for the assistance where the government needs to really come to the party, earthquake related. A lot of it is alternative accommodation while these longer term solutions are both resolved and implemented. And of course some regulatory assistance as well. So I'm hoping that there will be a positive response from government. I was hoping that there would be response before today so that we would have been able to, jointly announce that as part of the total package. But I think it's important that all councillors have this information. So thank you very much for your question, because it's given me a reason to put it on the table.
That's great. I think investigating it, that's fine. What I'm really worried about is the people that are currently getting repairs or about to get repairs that are going to start now.
And which is why we've asked to join the proceeding with the EQC and the Insurance Council. So if we left it so that our existing rules and that there was no, because in the particular cases, in the two cases that you're referring to are exactly the cases that were at the back of my mind when I felt that it was important to proceed with the legal action, is that if we don't have a ruling from the court that the fall in the floor levels and the increased exposure to flood risk is in itself damage that is covered by the EQC, then we don't get to the point of requiring them to lift their floor levels.
Yeah,
So
I understand that.
we don't get to make that decision because they don't have to apply for a building permit unless they meet the criteria of the Building Act.
Yeah.
So we have gone through this in multiple layers, Yanni, and there's no point raising questions with the task force.
There's nothing we can do on the immediate.
Yes, there is something we can do about it, but we have to get a ruling from the court on one instances. The other instance is to get the assistance of MB so that we can actually change the rules that apply in Christchurch in our flood management areas. But it is not something that we can just change ourselves. We are governed by statute, and the Building Act does not require us to require permit applications or building permits for damage to houses that doesn't affect the floor levels or doesn't lead to structural change. So.
Very quickly, can I just reiterate your comment about people in their homes and that being so important at the moment? At the Flockton meeting the other night, and I'm sure that my colleagues find the same at their own, we had several people come up to us who not only were quite physically stressed, emotional, at the end of their tether, single parent mums having to live with family members on couches. I mean, I can't stress enough. Not only have they gone through the earthquakes, but they're now dealing with this as well. And I know that you're aware of that, but it's just important to say we had people in tears, and it can't go on. It's just not acceptable.
No, well, I mean, you'll see from here that is precisely the position that we've put to central government. You know, they've asked us where do we help. They're waiting, for a report from us as to where they play a role. We've said this is where you play the immediate role. You have to come to the party now and assist us with temporary accommodation and temporary accommodation support. So it may be rental assistance because their insurance money may be due to run out. It may have already run out. And we've got people who are suffering the health effects that are well known internationally in a post-flooding environment. There are significant impacts, and add that to the psychosocial impact of the earthquakes themselves and the multiple aftershocks, then we are talking about a serious problem. So I'm hoping that the government will come to the party and assist with that temporary accommodation assistance, not just for the immediate term, but for the longer term, depending on what the outcome is. And then to work with us about what that long-term solution will look like, because it may not be that the engineering option is the one that we choose. It may be, and I kind of feel a sense of responsibility as the mayor of a city and the financial stress that it's under, to say that we would commit to spending over, tens of millions of ratepayers' dollars in terms of committing to engineering solutions when we don't know that is the best option for the area and for the city as a whole. So we've got to find the right balance. But in the meantime, people cannot stay where they are, and they do need support and assistance. Okay, so thank you very much for that. And I'm just wondering whether I should put the Tay Street resolution first, and then the other one. So I'll put the Tay Street drain dump station resolution, the whole staff recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And we move back to the Mayoral Flooding Taskforce update.
Yes.
Yes, we'll do that. Yes, I did notice that. Back to the flooding task force update, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And now what I'll do is I'll put the resolution to exclude the public for the balance of the meeting, but we will have the balance of the meeting after a lunch break. So we'll come back here for the public excluded section at 2 o'clock. So would someone like to move the public excluded? Andrew Turner, seconded by Phil Clearwater. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.